San Francisco 49ers and Chicago Bears in Week 14. It's a Locked On Podcast Network crossover. What are the biggest storylines, key matchups, and the paths to victory for the 49ers and Bears this Sunday? Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers, Locked On Bears crossover.
You are Locked On NFL crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another Locked On NFL crossover episode. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker here of Locked On 49ers with Lauren Cox, the host of Locked On Bears, breaking down the Week 14 matchup between a couple of teams that are probably not where fans hoped they would be in after 13 weeks of the NFL season. The 4-8 Bears at the 5-7 San Francisco 49ers. Appreciate all the everydayers, Bears and 49ers fans alike that are joining today's episode, which is brought to you by, as all all crossover episodes, brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app, use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Lauren, talk to me about these Chicago Bears. This is a interesting matchup. The 49ers are favored in this game. I don't know if they should be favored against any team right now with the way they're playing and how banged up they are. We talked a little bit off the air about the injury report. I want to get into that as well. But the biggest storylines, let's zoom out first. What is going on with Chicago Bears? Got themselves one of those fancy interim head coaches now.
Yeah, the big thing everyone's going to be watching for this week is just that fired head coach bump, right? The first game after you fire your head coach, the team tends to find a way to rally, and we saw it with the Saints and other teams earlier this season where you just kind of have that burst of energy where everything just kind of clicks and you feel like, wow, a breath of fresh air and the team's in a whole new direction. And, usually after a couple games, you kind of come back down to where you were as a team. But with this Bears team in particular, there was this feeling like the players were putting them in a position to win really the last three games and even the Commanders game earlier in the season before that, and that it was decisions directly by the head coach and the coaching staff that sort of kept the players from being able to win games. So I think there's some real merit to this idea that if you get the problem out of the picture in Matt Eberflus, like it's not just a token firing because to discipline somebody because things are going wrong, but it's actually like no, we think this is your fault and the team will be legitimately better by moving on from you. So how much of a bump and how improved the team looks this week will be a big thing that Bears fans are eagerly anticipating.
So has Caleb Williams skated through the finger pointing of the whole not calling a timeout, and then it turns out he changed the play, and it's such a debacle of a game. Obviously got the head coach fired, and you're not going to get rid of your recently drafted number 1 overall quarterback. So I'm not surprised that Eberflus is the one that gone and not Caleb Williams, right? But has he skated any of the repercussions from that event? It sounds like more things pointed toward the head coach than the quarterback because of how that game ended.
Yeah, for sure. Caleb came out immediately after that game and said, listen, maybe when I'm an older quarterback, I'll have the power to call a timeout there. I mean, he knows that he literally, the rules say he could have called the timeout there, but he kind of said, listen, the coach called a play in my headset. I was following what the coaching staff told me. And maybe when I'm older, I'll override the coaches, but I didn't want to be that guy who says, no, screw you. I'm going to take this into my own hands, just like that. And he changed a route on the play late in the game because he realized, oh crap, we're not going to be able to have time to, get a second playoff here. So he, change one of the routes so we could get more of a vertical throw to Roma Dunze there. And obviously it was just a disaster all around. But generally, I think Caleb skates because of everything he did in the game up to that point. He started that drive at his own 4-yard line and drove them into field goal range. And then they came back out of field goal range. But he did everything he needed to up to a certain point to put them in a position to win. And then they still lost afterward, but he kind of checked all the boxes ahead of time.
Is there a new timeout protocol in place? Is Caleb Williams allowed to call timeouts now?
He definitely is allowed to call timeouts. So they haven't said specifically how they're going to handle that. But the new interim head coach, Thomas Brown, has been such a breath of fresh air in terms of just checking every box of what you want to hear a coach come in. He's got a plan. He communicates it clearly. He's not talking in circles around stuff. He takes accountability. He has grabbed hold of that locker room and really shook things into shape to say, listen, here's what our identity is going to be. We all have to say this is non-negotiable. We're going to work together. Everything that Matt Eberflus was doing wrong, Thomas Brown has been taking meticulous notes and said, here's how we're going to do it differently, and we'll see if the results bore out.
Croc, going into week 14 for the San Francisco 49ers against the Chicago Bears, when you zoom out on what's going on with the team we cover every day, what do you think is the biggest storyline going into this specific week?
I think just the injuries. It's got to be. And a couple episodes ago, we talked about all the either Pro Bowl or All Pro players from last season that have missed games this year in comparison to last year. Last year it was a total of 6 games with all the guys combined. This year it's on pace for 48 and maybe more, depending on how injured certain guys are. So the 49ers are really banged up. I think that the record has taken a hit because of that. Obviously, injuries happen at the NFL level, but if you want the best version of the 49ers, they just can't have injuries to this extent. And right now, I mean, just last game, you lose Christian McCaffrey during the game, and it's like, well, all right, you lose Christian McCaffrey, but man, Jordan Mason, he was so good in the absence of Christian McCaffrey. Well, Jordan Mason ends up leaving the game, and now he's on IR with a high ankle sprain. So you have to go to the rookie. And I feel like the 49ers have had to play kind of miss and match with pretty much every position at some point throughout this season. And that's really taking a toll on, I think, not just them, but the people calling the plays, Kyle Shanahan, Nick Sorensen, those guys. I think they all feel that.
Do you get a sense of that, like, they're still really bought in on we can still make the playoffs, guys, let's band together? Or is there a point where it's just like you see all the bodies piling up around you and like, they're still going to play hard. They're not going to, literally phone it in and just try and lose games. But do you get a sense that like that determination is fading here as their playoff chances get smaller and the health of their roster keeps getting worse?
I think a lot of people like to point to maybe some of the seasons of the past for the 49ers where maybe they haven't played as well early on in the season. And then all of a sudden they get hot. Matter of fact, I think it was the Dallas Cowboy game, and they were talking about the importance of it. And one of the national broadcasters said, but the 49ers, they do this. They sometimes have a slow start, then they finish hot. So this game might be bigger for the Cowboys. Turns out 49ers really needed that win because right now they need every win that they can get. But this team is different. You can't say it's the teams of the past. Kyle Shanahan touched on that, and they're dealing with different things this season. And I think when they're having their injuries in the past, in the season when they were 3-5, a lot of their injuries were early on, and you had a quarterback kind of banged up and he missed some time. Then Jimmy Garoppolo came back. But this season, it just happens to be everyone, and they're even more hurt now than they were, earlier in the season. So I think because of that, maybe those players still have some kind of confidence that they can just figure it out. But I think deep down inside, they kind of know what their fortune is right now, and it's not very good.
Yeah, if you just listen to body language and watch guys talk about the team, it doesn't feel like confidence is very high right now throughout the locker room for the 49ers. And you can see why with the way things are going. And as far as on the field and flipping the switch, really after that Seahawks game a couple weeks ago is really when I realized, man, I don't think that switch is going to get flipped for the team this year. And then, they lose even more pieces and even bigger than losing a guy like Christian McCaffrey, Isaac Guerendo has an opportunity to make some plays and, maybe hit a big run or two, maybe even more so than some of the other running backs because of his speed and what he's shown he's able to do on occasion this season in the early part of his rookie year. But, missing a guy like Nick Bosa, I think their defensive line had already taken a step back. And there's been things the 49ers were able to lean on in the past and dominate up front, bully you, and they haven't been that team. And so, we'll see if Trent Williams is able to play or Nick Bosa is able to play in this game. It doesn't look great for them right now. They're basically in the same boat Kyle said to start the week as they were last week when they didn't play. So we'll see if they're able to play and, just a lack of impact around the team and a lack of confidence. And that's where the San Francisco 49ers are going into week 14, even though they are favored against the Chicago Bears with their new interim head coach. Will they get that interim bump? Let's talk a little bit more about some specifics, some key matchups coming up on the offensive and defensive side of the ball for these teams, and maybe paint a little picture of what a Niners win or what a Bears win looks like in week 14 next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bears brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I mentioned the line. Niners favored by 4.5 right now on FanDuel. So you want to get in on that action on either side of it. You can find it, all the weekly lines, of course, at FanDuel every single week. They're America's #1 sportsbook for a reason. Live NFL betting, NBA, NHL, every sport imaginable. You can get in on all that action at FanDuel, and you can get ready to tackle all the action right now because new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. And by the way, when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you're watching Niners Bears and you want to check out the latest stats, one of you live play-by-play, so much more. You can find it all on the very same page where you place your bets at FanDuel.com. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just download the app or go to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including history, economics, the great works of literature. Did you study these things in school? Maybe. Even if you did, maybe is it time for a refresher? Yeah, probably. And time and technology have changed a lot. History doesn't. The basics are there for you at Hillsdale College. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever, tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, and discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, guys, little keys and keys matchups here with the San Francisco 49ers and the Chicago Bears in week 14. Thanks, everybody, for jumping in on another crossover episode. Again, Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker here of Locked On 49ers with Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears. Key matchups. I want to go back to the 49ers offense and that rookie running back and Isaac Guerendo. And the big key for the 49ers has always been the run game. Can Kyle Shanahan simplify it and get back to those things and still run the football, stay in front of the sticks, and then allow Brock Purdy to do his thing and, own the middle of the field and play off of that? And it's something that's gotten away from him in a couple of games recently this year. And really, they haven't played that brand of complementary football. But specifically with Isaac Guerendo, it'll be interesting to me, Croc, to see how Isaac Guerendo looks if they're able to create some big plays in the run game. And I think they will be. But the big question for me is he going to be good in pass pro? And if he misses a block, is he going to be off of the field? And then Patrick Taylor Jr. is walking on the field because they just trust the veteran player more. That's my big question with Isaac Guerendo going the rest of the year, because he can run. If the hole's there, he can hit it and he can go. What's the vision look like? What do the little things look like with Isaac Guerendo? Because that's where he needs to get better as a football player. And then my question to you, Lauren, would be how good are the Bears at defending the run? Because the Bears defense has been pretty good at times this year. And, there's kind of been a little bit of an up and down team on both sides of the ball. But as far as playing a Kyle Shanahan football team, he likes to put those linebackers in a blender, likes to throw over the middle of the field, likes to run the football. Do the Bears match up against that?
Yeah, this is one of the things that with the firing of Matt Eberflus, it's gotten a little bit overshadowed because everyone's been so focused on the end of that Lions game. But part of the other reason he got fired here is that his defense has been falling apart the last few weeks. I mean, that was kind of the whole reason he was brought back, right? It was like, okay, there were some issues, but hey, you knew the Bears had a good defense and that he was doing a good job coaching that defense. But over the last 5 or 6 games, especially, there have been more and more cracks in that facade. And now, I mean, they got pretty well gashed. I mean, obviously against a good Detroit Lions offense, there's no shame in that, but like specifically in areas that they used to be great at. They were a phenomenal run defense most of last season and to start this year, but they've slowly been just broken apart by seemingly every running back they faced the last 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, James Cook with the Arizona Cardinals ran all over them, or James Conner, with the Arizona Cardinals ran all over them, and then the Packers and Vikings and Lions just kept gashing them for big plays in the running game. And the defense had always been good enough to where, okay, you're giving up some big plays in the ground game, but they'll force a turnover in the red zone, or they'll just hold firm at the goal line and hold you to field goals instead of touchdowns. But that can only work for so long, especially when on the other side of the ball, your offense has been failing to finish drives with those touchdowns. But we're kind of looking to see, can this defense bounce back a little bit too and say, okay, do they just rally a little bit more when it's not Eberflus as the guy that maybe they were losing some faith in, and just kind of say, hey, let's get back to playing defense the way that we know we can. Can we be a little bit more physical and a little bit more bought in? Or are you still going to have, Tyreek Stevenson level antics that get in the way of taking the football game seriously enough up front and being able to sort of attack those keys and be aggressive instead of playing on your heels a little bit more?
That made me think of something beyond, and apologies for not focusing only on this game, but looking ahead to whatever the coaching staff looks like for the Chicago Bears going forward. Have they built such have personnel wise, are the Bears in a place where they have to really scrap everything if they bring in a coach that wants to run a different style of defense? Are they really only built to play one way?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, if you were going to transition, from an even front to an out front, you might have some different things you want to do in your front seven. But generally, no, I think they've got a nice mix of skill sets here where, it's not like you have a bunch of cornerbacks that can only play man or can only play zone, right? You don't have a bunch of, defensive linemen that, are only, a certain body type that are going to be better against the run or, lighter edge rushers that you want to get upfield. Like they have a nice mix and some good versatility there. And it helps that Eberflus's defense has generally been a little bit less creative, a little bit more vanilla and a little bit more, hey, like 4-man rush, and we're just going to trust our talent against your talent. And generally that has worked pretty well. So I think there's some good flexibility there that whoever comes in next can be able to pick up the pieces with the good talent and then just kind of mesh their scheme to that. And it does bring me to the number one question for you guys that I know Chicago Bears fans are going to want to know entering this podcast, this Crossover Thursday podcast. Every Bears fan is tuning in to find out, okay, is there any chance Kyle Shanahan might leave the San Francisco 49ers? Or if not, what kind of draft pick compensation would it take to trade for Kyle Shanahan from the San Francisco 49ers? Because if he took this offense and brought some of his defensive coaches here, I think Bears fans would be really, really happy. And we all know it's a giant pipe dream over here.
What did it take for the Buccaneers to get John Gruden?
I think it was 2 1s. I think
I think it'd be memory. But is there like a package with Kyle Shanahan? Like, do you get Shanahan and John Lynch? Now, there are a lot of fans that are kind of, being a little overly emotional of this situation, understandably so. These aren't the expectations the 49ers had for this season, but John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have done a damn good job throughout their tenure. And I feel like everything you would want them to do as a fan, I mean, aside from, not blow a double-digit lead in the Super Bowl, which they've done multiple times. But aside from that, when it comes to, being aggressive at times, acquiring a bunch of talent, identifying mid-round draft picks who can contribute to your team, finding guys in the free agency, timely trades during the middle of the season, they've done pretty much everything to keep this boat afloat and make sure that the 49ers are a competitive team. And again, you can't overreact to this season where you are dealing with an unprecedented amount of injuries. So I get it. I saw it on social media the other day. Someone said, when am I seeing Kyle Shanahan with Caleb Williams? Well, 49er fans would. So I don't see that happening.
Yeah. And if I had to put it more simply, the only way Kyle Shanahan's not head coach of the 49ers is because he doesn't want to be.
And I think that's what Bears fans are holding on to, right? I don't think there's a lot of like, oh yeah, the 49ers are going to fire him because they're upset with him. But if he looks at the team and looks at the salary cap situation, the age of the roster, and then looks at the roster and especially the quarterback in Chicago and says, maybe that would be a better long-term future for me, even if the short term is going to be a little bit more rough right away. Could he be amicable to wanting a more of a mutual separation there, as opposed to the 49ers saying, no, this isn't good enough, we don't want you here, but him saying, yeah, maybe I'd like to move on. But I think Bears fans aren't holding their breath here, keeping their fingers crossed. It's just sort of like you hope one day you get that kind of lottery ticket, but we all know it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Look, you got a pretty good lottery ticket. Quarterback.
I think wanting a head coach at this time of the year for the Chicago Bears is perfect, because the biggest lottery ticket is Ben Johnson right now. So there's an abundance of talent on the Detroit Lions. Obviously, there's certain things that to figure out, with the roster, and you need some younger guys to, develop and mature a little bit. But Ben Johnson will be available. And if you poll 49er fans right now, hey, do you want Shanahan or Ben Johnson? I think that poll might be a little closer than people expect. So, you guys got a good little opportunity this offseason.
It sounds like that we need a 3-team trade. Okay, so Shanahan to the Bears, Johnson to the 49ers, and then the Lions got to get something in return, some draft picks and maybe a player or two. Sounds like a deal.
It'd probably be worth it for the Bears just to make sure that Ben Johnson goes either to them or somewhere else. And yeah, you hurt the opponent while you help yourself there. I can
win.
That makes sense on a Madden video game level. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be reality. I do miss the old coach trades, though. I wish we saw that more often. But and if anything, probably more likely than even Kyle Shanahan going somewhere else because he wants to, is him just not coaching because he looks pretty exhausted right now. And talking about the confidence and talking about the vibe in the locker room, talking about how many grays he's sprouting on his head. He might want to just take a year off, if anything else. And then obviously he would skip over that Bears job unless they have another one and done coach over there. Gosh, you hope they figure it out. I can't believe the Bears are doing it again, like for the third time. Draft the quarterback and then fire the coach. Like, that's insane that they've done it again. It's almost impressive that they've been able to do that 3 times in a row with, top draft pick quarterbacks.
The short answer there is ownership. Front office maybe wanted to make a coaching change last offseason and wasn't allowed to. And so finally they won that battle this season, but it's been above team president and above general manager where, no, we're going to stick with this coach. Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry, bad idea. That when you have non-football people involved in football decisions, that's where you get organizational dysfunction.
Yeah, I think we had some of that going on in New York with the Giants and Daniel Jones, and ownership's like, no, we like Daniel Jones, which is probably the only reason why, the GM doesn't get fired for what happens. I think it was all on ownership if you're reading between the lines. And unfortunately, we're not privy to those conversations. And I really wonder where Eberflus was on their wish list of coaches to get in the first place. Did they settle for Eberflus? Were they never really super sold on him? But they're like, oh, well, this is our best option, so we'll give him a try right now. And they should have a better option this offseason.
And one quick story there. When they hired Eberflus, they also interviewed Dan Quinn. They flew him to Chicago, gave him a coach seat in the back of a plane. So that's part of how this organization operates here.
Was it the head coach seat?
Well,
all right. Let's get into more of this football game. Bears, Niners, week 14, some more key matchups, and what a Niners win, what a Bears win looks like Sunday next. The last segment of this episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bears brought to you by Mint Mobile. And when you're talking about big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. And somewhere in between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. With Mint Mobile, when they say $15 a month, when you get a 3-month plan, or when you purchase a 3-month plan, yeah, they mean it. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you. With premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month, use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. And to get this new customer offer and your 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, just go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to 3 $15 months. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabyte on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, Croc, what do you see as the biggest key matchup here for the 49ers against the Chicago Bears Sunday?
I think it's always easy to talk about, taking care of the ball, winning the turnover battle. But when you look at the 49ers game against the Buffalo Bills, and albeit it was in a snowstorm, the one thing that really hurt them were the turnovers. I mean, just the fumbles. They fumbled 3 times in that game, multiple times on special teams. Ball slips out of a quarterback's hand. You got to fumble near the red zone as you think you're going into the end zone. Those things just can't happen. And if you look at a Chicago Bears team, they seem like you got a young quarterback, can get after a little bit. Can you force him to make a throw where maybe he's just a little confused and take the ball away? As a 49ers team, you're hoping you can do that. And if you can, you got to make sure you're not doing anything to help this guy, to give him confidence. Because I've watched a lot of Caleb Williams throughout the years, whether it's at USC or with the Chicago Bears now, and he can get hot. Once he starts getting that confidence, he starts throwing that rock around. Talked about, that last drive starting on the 4-yard line. I mean, he was throwing seeds, boom, 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 and moving them down the field. So you can't give him confidence. Now, I've also seen the other side of it where it looks like he's a little all over the place. And that's where he starts to take sacks. He starts to hold on to the ball too long. He's a little unsure of what he's seeing. You got to make sure that you take his confidence early in this game. And to do that, you got to take the ball away. So 49ers have to make sure that they take care of the ball. Don't give this kid confidence and more opportunities, because then he'll end up burning you.
Lauren, what do you see? What kind of key matchups are you looking for in this game? And a sub question for you that I want to make sure we cover is DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. They look like they're even going to play. And Caleb Williams aside, do they have enough firepower to take advantage of a banged up 49ers defense?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with this. I mean, I can't sit here and complain about injuries for the Chicago Bears because, I mean, look who I'm talking to here. But, when you start the first week of Thomas Brown's interim head coaching job with your Wednesday injury report having no DJ Moore, no Keenan Allen, no DeAndre Swift, no Roschon Johnson, you'd be on your number 3 running back and your number 3 wide receiver at the top of the lists there, then most likely you're going to get at least a few of those guys. You're not going to be completely depleted there. Thomas Brown has said, none of those guys are ruled out for Sunday. There's a chance all of them could play. They're just going to sort of take it easy here. I'd be surprised if DJ Moore doesn't go. He's been kind of banged up all year and has just kind of played through it for the most part. So I think he'll be able to go. And between Roschon Johnson and DeAndre Swift, one of them should be good to go, and you can get by if you're missing the other one there. So I don't think they're going to be horribly depleted on offense. And again, no room to complain about being horribly depleted on offense. But I think Crocker's right. Like, you got to be able to get Caleb Williams into a rhythm here early. Against the Detroit Lions, the Bears had 1 first down in the entire first half and went into halftime down 16-0. They still had a chance to win it at the end of the fourth quarter because of how great Caleb was in the second half. But man, we don't need to make it so difficult for him. He doesn't need to have to be Superman at the end of the fourth quarter 3 straight weeks. Like, if you can just get the running game going a little bit early on, which they've struggled with in recent games, and find some quick hitting passes to get something rolling here. This feels like an offense that builds on itself, where if they're not going backwards with a first down penalty or a second down sack, if they could just kind of stack up a check down for 4 yards here, a run for 3 yards there, get you into a third and manageable, like that's where they can kind of get the stone rolling down the hill and build up some momentum here. And they just haven't been able to get out of their own way early in these games. So I look at the Bears against the 49ers, like, don't come out shooting like gangbusters, like you got to try and score a touchdown on the first play. Like, just stack up some positive plays and then let the momentum peel off from Caleb Williams from there as he builds that confidence that Eric was talking about.
Croc, what's it look like? Paint me a picture. 49ers win Sunday over the Chicago Bears. What are they doing differently that they haven't been able to do recently in some of their losses that are stacking up?
I think having more consistent offense and on that side of the ball, just being able to move the ball. We've been privileged to watching the 49ers throughout the years be really good from possession to possession. And this year, it's just been very sketchy. And when they have been hot early on, they haven't been able to mirror that performance and finish hot. And we've seen them blow several leads. So I think for the 49ers offense, you just have to get in the rhythm with the play calling, which again may be difficult when you've been playing without a lot of your stars, the guys you were counting on to be there and help you down the stretch during the season. Defensively, they got to tackle better. Watching them against the Buffalo Bills, I keep wanting to say Chicago Bears, Buffalo Bills, but watching them against the Buffalo Bills, they just didn't want to tackle. And you let Cook just run rampant. You let 22 just run rampant. You can't allow that to happen. And that's been the 49ers really throughout the last few weeks. You watch them against the Green Bay Packers. Packers running back just had his way with the 49ers, Josh Jacobs. And when you look at the Chicago Bears, man, you got Swift. I got Swift on my fantasy team. There have been games where he's gotten hot. There have been games where they've been able to get the ball to him in space in the passing game and have him do damage. They have some weapons offensively. Keenan Allen, watch him start to pick up at different times. Roma Dunze, he's had a couple big games. You cannot allow those guys to get in any kind of a groove. And with the 49ers, I think it starts with being able to stop the running game and maybe make the Chicago Bears one-dimensional. But again, with Swift, he's a dynamic back. That could be a little tough.
Yeah, it's felt like DeAndre Swift's season has just been this weird roller coaster of up and down, where like started out really slow and then was hot for like 3 or 4 weeks and then kind of disappeared for a while and then had another big game against the Green Bay Packers and now is kind of disappearing again, where each and every week we're not really sure exactly what we're going to get. You see almost a different level of confidence from him too, in some of the same ways we talked about with Caleb, where he's either decisive and attacking it or he's really hesitant and just not getting upfield and taking the yards that are there.
Is that an issue up front? Because I know, we talk every single offseason, it feels like, about the Bears rebuilding their offensive line. Is it a young quarterback holding on to the ball too much? Is it just a weird running back who's really hot and cold? Is it an offensive line thing, or is it everything? Obviously, they thought it was partially an offensive coordinator thing.
Yeah, I think it was partially an offensive coordinator thing for sure. It's definitely sometimes an offensive line thing and sometimes a DeAndre Swift thing. I mean, sometimes it's just you're going 3 and out on 4 straight drives, so you just never really have a chance to actually get that running back going. You hand it off on first down, he gets 2 yards, It's 2nd and 8. You got to throw. That's incomplete pass. It's 3rd and 8. You're definitely not going to hand it off then. So then Swift never gets going. Caleb never gets going. And it just sort of builds on itself in that way. I mean, and sometimes it's been quality of opponent. He run on some really bad run defenses and takes off. And then when they play, a couple of really good defenses in the Vikings and Lions, it's a little bit harder for him to get going.
Lauren, are you advising your Locked On Bears listeners to take those extra 4.5 points and bet on the Bears against the 49ers?
If there was ever a week for them to end this losing streak, this feels like the right concoction here of 49ers in a little bit of free fall here, maybe some questions about how dedicated they are to fighting hard the rest of the season versus maybe phoning it in a little bit just because of the injuries and everything. And you get the post head coach bump here. Like, man, this was the game on the schedule preseason I think Bears fans were dreading the most. It was like, man, you got 3 divisional games and then the 49ers and then 2 divisional games. Like, that's murderer's row. And all of a sudden, this is like the easy game, or the easiest game, I should say, left on the schedule here, where you're like, oh, maybe they can catch a little breather against the 49ers. It shouldn't be as hard in this game as it has been the last 2 or 3 weeks against divisional opponents. So it's hard to see a team that's lost 6 in a row and say, yes, this is going to be for sure the one that they win, but it's as good of a chance for a Bears win coming into this game as any we've had in the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I'm buying the head coach bump here, and I'm thinking it's not going to be a blowout or some kind of just super dominant Bears victory like there's some brand new team, but like the difference has been razor thin the last 3 weeks. And I think this can be enough to push them over the edge and win still a close, hard fought game with plenty of sloppy mistakes in it, but a win instead of a loss at the very end.
Well, if you think that the 49ers fans wanted Kyle Shanahan out before this game, they lose to the Chicago Bears, all hell is going to break loose.
Yeah, because 49ers fans are looking at the playoff odds, and they're thinking, okay, well, you got, of course, going to beat the Bears, got to beat this team, might lose to the Lions, but got to win all the rest of them. Then you can still make the playoffs 9-8, and that falls apart real quick if you lose in week 14 to the Chicago Bears. And I think a lot of 49ers fans that are still have some hope for the season that they're going to flip the switch and turn this thing on. A loss this week would really crush those thoughts. And to be honest with you, yeah, the interim bump, 4.5 points. The way the 49ers are playing right now, I don't think that's terrible money with the way things are going. But the 49ers still have an opportunity. Mathematics are still on their side for now. We'll see how it goes on Sunday. Should be fun. Week 14. I can't wait to get a closer look at Caleb Williams and this newly coached Chicago Bears football team and see if the 49ers can turn things around. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on Locked On 49ers and Locked On Bears. Always fun doing the crossovers. Appreciate you, Lauren. Do some fine work over there at Locked On Bears. You guys should find him on Twitter as well. Cox Sports 1. Croc and I, of course, will be back tomorrow on Locked On 49ers. Make sure you guys are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you listen to these podcasts, and we'll be back with you next time right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.